outcomes. We know that there's chemical outcomes. We know that we have specific behaviors or thought or emotions that get incorporated into that. So as we move through this discussion very carefully, keep in mind that one of the things that we should all be familiar with is that we all experience the same challenges. We are not abnormal if for some reason we feel like we're dealing with stress in all of its varieties and all of its forms. Maybe we have intense feelings of sadness, of gloom. Maybe we feel very anxious or overwhelmed. Those are normal feelings for all of us to experience. How we deal with those becomes a little bit of a challenge. We know that there's some constants. We know, for example, when we experience that there is going to be some chemical changes that occur within the body. Those are predictable to a large extent. We know that there's going to be some type of an autonomic response, a neurological response that occurs within the body. And it's why a lot of times we say that this is a neurochemical process within the body, because it incorporates multiples of systems and functions. And then we know that as a result of that, we're going to have some physiological change that occurs. But we also know that there are some variables. It's not always predictable for us. What causes us to feel a certain way can be very different from one person to another. How long that experience lasts for us and how intense those feelings, whether they're overactivity or otherwise, how intense those feelings are for us is also a variable that is unique to us as an individual. Now we can capture this. We do know that there is a cycle associated with this. And one of the cycles that we see associated with this, one we would say is episodic. I'll give you a good example of that. I was driving home not too long ago, and as I entered onto the freeway, I'm getting older, so I'm not in as big of a hurry as I was before, but I am going the speed limit. I was about halfway home, and a truck pulled up beside me. And the guy began yelling at me incessantly, obscenities, and gave some very fun hand gestures towards me. And then rolled down his window and said, "I'm going to blankety blank kill you." And I said, "I don't know why," trying to be calm. But being a man and who I am, I rolled down my window. And I said, "Is that right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Let's get off at the next exit. We'll settle this like men." And he said, you betcha. This is going to be blank, 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 and you're going to regret. And I'm like, that sounds great. Next exit, pull in front of me. I'll make room. We're in heavy traffic. He pulled in front of me. The exit came. He pulled off. I honked and waved. I had momentary stress. He's probably still under stress. Now, I immediately got rid of the car I was driving. I didn't want to find him again. Now that's one period, that's one scenario, that's episodic. There's some type of a cause, there's some type of a trigger. And then we go through the process. We know we're going to have chemical changes. We know we're going to have physiological changes. But at some point our body's going to come back into balance. We can have what I would refer to as a physiological imbalance. Now there can be lots of reasons why that occurs, and we don't really necessarily need to define what that is today. But when we have this physiological imbalance, a trigger is not necessary. The cascade remains the same, but we might not know why we're feeling the way that we are. We might not understand why we're having the experience that we are. We might literally be fine one moment and then have overwhelming changes the next. This is something that has become prevalent with who we are and within our society. I read something one time, I think I even shared it from this stage a few years ago. I said that your brain is an incredibly complex organism and that it has more than 100,000 different chemical reactions that occur every second. I recently saw this in something I was reading from Harvard Medical. and in it they said there is likely millions of reactions occurring in our brain at any given time. Now, because of the complexity, we know that there are cofactors. We often talk about cofactors, especially when we're talking about nutrition and other things, and we talk about all the cofactors your cells and your body needs. Well, when we talk about mental wellness, there's cofactors that we need as well, and let me go through them very quickly. One cofactor is neurotransmitters. We know that we need serotonin. If we have a lack of serotonin, we might feel very intense feelings of sadness, as an example. It could be completely overwhelming to us. As another neurotransmitter, we know that we need GABA, gamma-alburylic acid. Now, GABA is really important because GABA has the opposite effect. Sometimes we can feel incredibly anxious and overwhelmed. And GABA is subduing to the neurological system, that cascade. When it's present and when it's interacting with the receptors for GABA, we feel less overwhelmed, we feel less anxious. Now, we also, I think another great cofactor we need is referred to as alkaloids. Now, alkaloids is a broad category of chemistry. It's organic chemistry, but it encompasses a lot of different elements. For example, morphine is an alkaloid. There are poisons that are alkaloids. And so this is a very specific group of alkaloids that are supporting to the body. When we have the right alkaloids that are present, it interacts with two very critical receptors. One is PDE4. This is the receptor that's important for GABA. The other is 5-HT. This is the receptor. Remember we had 5-HT3 in the digestive system? 5-HT is what we find within the brain, and it's an interactive point for serotonin. And when we have alkaloids present, then we have value that comes from both serotonin and from GABA. And then the other thing that we need, I call this the rule of 80s. Your brain is comprised primarily of fats. It is estimated that 80% of the population is at least 80% deficient in fatty acids. We need omega-3 fatty acids. Now, those are all critical components. Now, I have a short video I want to play to you that might help you understand some of this a little bit better.
Ooh, what is stress to me? That's a very broad question.
I feel like, is this heaviness and this pressure?
My body gets warmer. I start sweating sometimes.
Stress for me is that which is not known.
At least in my life, it's when I feel overwhelmed.
When it comes to finances,
Your head's in the past and the future. Just worried.
A big stress factor for me was coming back from Vietnam.
Yes, my mom is deaf, and there is also some stress involved with being a child of a deaf parent.
Just a bit about me. I grew up like the tallest girl in my school, so that definitely set me apart, and I think for a while I was pretty insecure about it, and that brought me some stress.
I am a mom, I have 5 kids. You run into this almost scarcity issue as parents where you just literally feel like there's just not enough. There's not enough time to give them. There's not enough emotional energy and support to give them. There's not enough money to provide all the things that they need and want.
With technology in general, it feels like there's this expectation to let someone know what you're doing constantly. Otherwise, you just don't exist, right? And it feels like you have to be connected with everyone else, almost 24/7.
It's definitely hard for me to use social media.
Everything is perfect. All the pictures you post, you edit them to perfection. And seeing everyone's perfect pictures that you know have been edited, but you still compare yourself to that.
it rears its ugly head in the form of headaches and back pain and, sadness, feelings of unworthiness. It's unfortunately a big part of my life.
The good word is adapt. One of the things that I've learned is you have to be adaptable.
Some things that I do to adapt? First of all, just acknowledging that it's a battle for me and recognizing when those patterns of behavior of wanting to cancel and panicking and wanting to stay in bed are coming up.
Dancing is one of the few times where I don't get in my head, so I'm really present. Anytime I can find something that helps me be present.
Nothing relieves stress better for me than just picking up, my acoustic guitar and just playing some of my favorite songs,
I love to knit when I'm stressed. I know it's kind of foolish, but it really does take your mind off of it because you have one thing to focus on.
You have to recognize, and I think that's a part of this recognition process. There are things in life, you know this, that you simply can't control. You can't. And you can stress about it all you want to, and that still doesn't give you the control.
Well, just have you pull over here for a second.
Okay.
Go ahead and smell it.
Smell it?
Well, this is very pleasant.
Oh, that smells really good.
It's very calming.
It's soothing. It feels, I feel clear.
I would love to have this, going through my house in the mornings. Like
I kind of get it through my body of just feeling light and positive.
This is changing so many lives.
Well,
I bet it is.
welcome to the doTERRA
The biggest
family.
problem.
Adaptive. Now, in the couple of minutes I have left, let me move this quickly and let me bring some of these components together for you. Now, very much like what we saw with the turmeric capsule, this had never been done before. We've never seen a supplement like this before either. This also has never been done before. And what we did was we took some very critical elements, those cofactors. So we have gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA, and we know that it is that main inhibitory neurotransmitter for when we have those feelings of anxiousness and we have overactivity within our neurological systems. So we've added that to this mix, as well as we have scallidium root. Now, scallidium root is a very unique plant, and one of the major components that we see in scallidium root, and there's a lot of research talking about the alkaloids. Now, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and these interactions specifically with PDE4 and 5-HT, so we have this sustained neurotransmitter activity that we need from both serotonin and from GABA. Now, additionally, we went to another very natural plant called the ahi flower. And with the ahi flower is where we're getting now a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. And we're giving it to you in this delivery with both the alkaloids and with the neurotransmitters that we need. Now, finally, no oil blend, no process of supplementation would be complete for us without talking about some very specific essential oils. Now, there's a large body of evidence that talks about linalool as an individual compound. And it talks about linalool in stress and all of its varieties that we've talked about today. So even some of those very intense feelings of sadness or being overwhelmed. And linalool is very effective, and we have high concentrations coming from lavender, coriander, and fennel. Now, we've also added a little bit of wild orange into the blend that we see within the supplement itself, and that rounds out and balances that perfectly for use within the supplement. Now, the other thing that we've done is that we've got to concentrate on an essential oil blend. I love this quote from Helen Keller. She said, "Smell is an important wizard that transports you across thousands of miles and all the years that you have lived. Odors, instantaneous and fleeting, cause my heart to dilate joyously or contract with remembered grief." part of the reason we have that experience, we know, is because of the limbic system. Now you hear people talking about and referring to the limbic system all the time, and there is a lot of components and cascades, and generally we just think of the limbic system as a balancer for mood and emotion, but it does much more. And without going into detail on this, there's two critical parts that I want to point out in the cascade that's associated with the limbic system. One is the amygdala, and the other is the hypothalamus. The supplement functions through the amygdala. That is an important feature of this product, and in the coming months, we'll explain to you more and more of what that means in great detail. But then we also have the hypothalamus, which stimulates the cascade we're all familiar with when we think about the limbic system. And one of the things that the hypothalamus is most responsive to, of course, is aroma, smell. And so we have a separate essential oil blend outside of the supplement. Now this is meant to be used in connection with the supplement. So think about the supplement as long-term benefits, and think about the essential oil as fast-acting benefits. Now we have lavender and neroli, sweet gum and copaiba, and then we also have spearmint and wild orange. Now you can see that we pulled from several different categories: wood, flower, mint, and also citrus. And this is a perfect balance of the essential oils and the value that they will bring. So once again, think about systemic pathway. When we take the supplement, we're affecting neurological outcomes and biochemical outcomes. When we use the essential oil, we're influencing behavior, thought, and emotion.